The gleaming lobby of Tate Towers froze as Marcus Tate, in a shabby coat, faced Rachel Holt's sneer at the front desk. "No room for you," she scoffed, her fingers deleting his booking with a smirk, dismissing him as a nobody. Marcus's eyes blazed, his voice a low growl. "You sure about that?" he said, pulling out a phone glowing with proof. The crowd gasped, sensing a storm. Why was Rachel so bold? What secret did Marcus hide beneath his worn cap? Dive into this explosive tale of justice and revelation. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-pounding stories that shatter bias and spark change. Hit the bell. Don't miss the next epic twist. The lobby of Tate Towers was a cathedral of opulence, its marble floors gleaming under cascading chandeliers. A five-star sanctuary where wealth whispered in every detail. Marcus Tate stood at the front desk, a solitary figure in a worn gray wool coat, its collar frayed, and a navy knit cap pulled low over his salt and pepper hair. His dark skin glowed faintly under the lights, his gray beard trimmed neat, his sharp brown eyes hidden behind scratched glasses. In his pocket, his father's fountain pen, engraved with integrity, rested like a talisman, grounding the hospitality titan who'd built this empire. Marcus Incognito was here to probe his flagship hotel, rattled by complaints of rude staff, discriminatory service, and rooms vanishing for certain guests. No suit, no entourage, just a man checking in, testing the soul of his creation. But the welcome he received was a slap of disdain. Rachel Holt lounged behind the desk, her crisp white blouse and black skirt pristine, her blonde ponytail swinging as she scrolled her phone, lips glossed red, her pale skin flushed slightly from boredom, her green eyes flicking up only to dismiss. She radiated indifference, her badge a mockery of service. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice low even. "Got a reservation," he said, adjusting his cap. "Marcus Tate." Rachel's smirk was instant, her voice dripping with mockery. "Aha," she said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, eyes glued to her screen. "Let me guess, nothing here. You sure you meant this Tate Towers?" Marcus's brow arched, his voice steady. "Pretty damn sure," he said, his hands in his pockets, the pen a quiet weight. "Check again." Rachel sighed, her eyes rolling as she tapped lazily, her smirk widening. "Nope, zip," she said, leaning back, her phone glowing brighter. "Maybe you booked the budget joint across town." Easy mix-up. Liam, the bellboy, lingered near a luggage cart, his red and gold uniform crisp, his brown hair a messy crop, his freckled face tense. He'd seen Marcus in a company memo, his eyes widening as he caught the exchange. But he stayed silent, his fingers twitching on the cart. A guest in a velvet blazer, waiting nearby, muttered to her companion, "She's got some nerve." Her diamond earrings flashing disapproval. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling to his confirmation email. "Here's my booking," he said, holding it up, his voice calm but pointed. "Says Tate Towers tonight, my name. Wanna try one more time?" Rachel's laugh was sharp, her voice cutting. "Sir, the system's crystal clear," she said, barely glancing at the screen. "No Tate, no room. Maybe you fat-fingered it. Happens to folks like you." Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice low. "Dangerous. Folks like me?" he said, leaning forward, his coat brushing the counter. "Spell that out, Rachel. What's like me mean?" Rachel's smirk faltered, her fingers drumming. "You know, just people who get confused," she said, her tone defensive, her eyes darting to Liam, who shifted uncomfortably, his whisper to another bellboy barely audible. "She's at it again." Liam's voice was a hiss, his eyes on Marcus. "She canceled the guy's booking last week," he muttered. "Same vibe." The guest in the velvet blazer stepped closer, her voice sharp. "This is outrageous," she said, her companion nodding. "Do your job, miss, or get someone who will." Rachel's cheeks flushed, her voice snapping. "I'm doing my job," she said, her ponytail swinging as she typed, her fingers shaky. "Systems down. Okay? Nothing for a Marcus Tate. Try the motel on 5th. Marcus's gaze hardened, his voice a quiet storm. Motel, huh? He said, pocketing his phone. You're real quick to send me packing. Ever think you're betting on the wrong horse? Rachel crossed her arms, her voice defiant. I'm not betting anything, she said, her smirk returning. I'm telling you there's no room. Deal with it. Liam's eyes widened, his voice a whisper. She's digging her own grave, he said, his hands gripping the cart, his loyalty torn between duty and truth. Marcus leaned closer, his voice low, cutting. Deal with it, he said, his glasses glinting. How about you deal with the manager? Get him out here. Now. Rachel's smirk vanished, her voice trembling but sharp. Manager's swamped, she said, her fingers clutching her phone. You can wait, but it won't change a thing. No room, no reservation, no dice. The lobby crackled with tension. Guests turning, their murmurs a growing chorus. The guest in the velvet blazer gasped, unacceptable. Her companion pulling out a phone, ready to record. A businessman in a pinstripe suit paused, his briefcase swinging, his voice low. This is why I avoid this place. Marcus's pen weighed heavy, his father's voice ringing. Every guest deserves respect. Rachel's dismissal wasn't just incompetence. It was a violation of his empire's heart. He tapped the counter, his voice a velvet threat. You sure you want to play this game, Rachel? He said, his eyes boring into hers. Because I'm real good at winning. Rachel swallowed, her voice faltering. It's not a game, she said, her hands shaking. It's the truth. No booking. Liam's gaze darted to Marcus, his voice a whisper. She's lying, he said, his freckles stark against his pale skin. I saw her swap a booking for some VIP earlier. The sizzle of drama filled the air. The lobby a stage for a reckoning. Marcus's calm masked a fire. His plan to expose his hotel's rot now in motion. Rachel's arrogance was a spark, and the truth, sharp, unforgiving, was about to ignite Tate Towers, shaking its polished walls to their core. The lobby of Tate Towers shimmered with an uneasy tension, the chandeliers casting fractured light across the marble floors, their glow mocking the drama unfolding at the front desk. Marcus Tate stood firm, his worn-wool coat brushing the counter, his knit cap tilted slightly, the fountain pen in his pocket a silent vow of integrity. His dark eyes burned with quiet resolve. Rachel Holt's dismissal still ringing in his ears. Rachel, her blonde ponytail taut, gripped her phone like a lifeline. Her glossed lips pursed, her earlier smirk replaced by a flicker of unease. The air crackled, guests murmuring, their eyes darting between the two. Liam, the bellboy, hovered near a luggage cart, his red and gold uniform crisp, his freckled face tense, his loyalty torn as he watched Marcus's calm defiance. The guest in the velvet blazer lingered nearby, her diamond earrings glinting, her whispers to her companion a soft chorus of indignation. Rachel straightened, her voice sharp but shaky. Look, I told you, there's no room, she said, her fingers tapping the keyboard, her eyes avoiding Marcus. You want to argue? Take it up with the system. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low, cutting. The system, huh? He said, his glasses glinting under the lights. Or you? Because I'm betting you made my booking disappear. Want to tell me why? Rachel's cheeks flushed, her voice rising. Why? She snapped, her ponytail swinging. Because the system's glitchy, that's why. Don't make this personal. Liam shifted, his voice a whisper to another bellboy. She's full of it, he muttered, his hands fidgeting on the cart. I saw her swap a booking for some hotshot an hour ago. Marcus's gaze didn't waver, his voice steady. Personal? He said, his hand brushing the pen in his pocket. You took one look at me, coat, cap, no flash, and decided I'm not worth your time. That's about as personal as it gets. The lobby hushed, guests leaning in, their murmurs growing. The guest in the velvet blazer spoke up, her voice sharp. This is disgraceful. she said, her companion nodding. Check his booking properly, or get someone who can. Rachel's eyes flashed, her voice venomous. I'm doing my job, she said, her fingers slamming the keys. There's nothing here. Maybe you booked wrong. Okay? Happens all the time. Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice a quiet storm. Happens all the time, huh? He said, pulling out his phone again, his fingers scrolling. Funny how it only happens to some people. You got a pattern, Rachel? Rachel's smirk returned, brittle but defiant. A pattern? She said, crossing her arms. You're reaching. I don't control the system. It's just picky. Liam's eyes widened, his voice low. Picky my ass. He muttered, his freckles stark as he glanced at Marcus. She's covering her tracks. A businessman in a pinstripe suit paused, his briefcase swinging, his voice dry. This place is a circus, he said, checking his watch. No wonder the reviews tanked. Marcus tapped the counter, his voice calm but pointed. Picky, huh? He said, his eyes locking with Rachel's. Let's test that. Pull up the VIP list. Bet my name's not the only one missing. Rachel's face paled, her voice faltering. VIP list. She stammered, her fingers hesitating. That's restricted. You can't just. Can't I? Marcus cut in, his voice a velvet blade. Call your manager. Let's see how restricted it is when I'm done. Rachel's hands trembled, her voice shrill. You're wasting my time, she said, her ponytail bouncing as she leaned forward. No manager, no list, no room. Take a hike. The guest in the velvet blazer gasped, her voice loud. This is absurd, she said, pulling out her phone. I'm tweeting this right now. Tate Towers. What a joke. Liam stepped closer, his voice a whisper to Marcus. She's scared, he said, his eyes flicking to Rachel. She knows she screwed up. Marcus's gaze softened briefly, his voice low. Thanks, kid, he said, then turned back to Rachel, his tone firm. You're digging a hole, Rachel. Keep going and you won't climb out. Rachel's smirk crumbled, her voice a hiss. You think you're some big shot, she said, her hands clenching. You're nobody. I run this desk, and I say you're out. The lobby was a pressure cooker. Guests whispering, phones raised. The drama a live wire. The businessman muttered, she's toast. His briefcase forgotten. The companion of the velvet blazer guest nodded, her voice low. He's got her cornered. Marcus pulled out a second phone, his fingers swift, his voice a quiet threat. Nobody, huh? He said, scrolling. Let's see what the system says about that. Rachel's eyes widened, her voice trembling. What's that supposed to mean? She said, her fingers gripping the counter, her bravado fraying. Marcus's grin was sharp, his voice a promise. Means you're about to learn something, he said, his pen a silent vow in his pocket. Hope you're ready. The chandeliers flickered, the lobby a stage for a showdown. Liam's hands shook, his loyalty to Marcus growing, while Rachel's defiance teetered on collapse. The guests watched, breathless, as Marcus's quiet strength unraveled the hotel's rot. Each tap on his phone a step toward a reckoning that would shake Tate Towers to its foundations. The truth was close, and when it hit, it would burn. The lobby of Tate Towers was a crucible of tension, the chandeliers casting jagged light across the marble. Amplifying the standoff at the front desk, Marcus Tate stood unwavering, his worn wool coat brushing the counter, his knit cap tilted, the fountain pen in his pocket, his father's, etched with integrity. A silent anchor, his dark eyes burned with controlled fury. Rachel Holt's blatant dismissal a wound to his empire's core. Rachel, her blonde ponytail taut, clutched the edge of the counter, her glossed lips trembling, her earlier arrogance crumbling under Marcus's relentless calm. The air crackled, guests whispering, their phones poised to capture the drama. Liam, the bellboy, stood by his luggage cart, his red and gold uniform creased, his freckled face tight with anticipation, his loyalty to Marcus now a quiet fire. The guest in the velvet blazer watched, her diamond earrings glinting, her murmurs to her companion a steady hum of outrage. Marcus held up his second phone, the screen glowing with the hotel's internal system. His voice low, lethal. "Found something interesting," he said, his glasses catching the light. "My reservation. Booked. Confirmed. Then deleted. Guess whose name's on the log?" "Rachel?" Rachel's face drained of color, her voice a squeak. "That's not possible," she said, her hands shaking as she leaned back. "I didn't touch anything. It's a glitch." Marcus's grin was sharp, his voice a blade. "Glitch?" he said, turning the phone so she could see. "Your login, your timestamp. You swapped my room for some VIP. Wanna explain that?" The lobby gasped, guests leaning closer, their whispers a rising tide. Liam's eyes widened, his voice a hiss to another bellboy. "She's done," he muttered, his hands gripping the cart. "She's been pulling this crap for months." Rachel's ponytail quivered, her voice shrill. "You're hacking or something?" she said, her fingers fumbling for her phone. "I don't know how you got that, but it's not my fault." Marcus leaned forward, his voice a quiet storm. "Hacking?" he said, his eyes boring into hers. "This is my system, Rachel. I built it. You're not dodging this. Why'd you erase my booking? Say it." Rachel's breath hitched, her voice cracking. I thought you were a nobody," she said, her hands clenching. "We prioritize high rollers. You didn't look like one." The guest in the velvet blazer scoffed, her voice loud. "Disgusting," she said, her phone raised, recording. "This place is a disgrace." A businessman in a pinstripe suit shook his head, his voice dry. "No wonder my clients complain," he said, his briefcase forgotten. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen." Liam stepped closer, his voice low but bold. "She's done worse," he said, his eyes on Marcus. "Last week, she turned away a family. Said they didn't fit the vibe." Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice steady but searing. "Didn't fit the vibe," he said, his gaze pinning Rachel. "You're picking who gets a room based on your gut. That's how you run my hotel." Rachel's eyes glistened, her voice desperate. "It's not just me," she said, her hands flailing. "The manager pushes us to prioritize VIPs. I was following orders." Marcus's grin faded, his voice a growl. "Orders to discriminate," he said, pocketing his phone. "You're not pinning this on someone else. You made a choice, Rachel. A bad one." The lobby was electric, guests murmuring, their phones flashing. The companion of the velvet blazer guest whispered, "He's tearing her apart." Her eyes wide, the businessman muttered, "About time someone did." Liam's voice trembled, his loyalty breaking through. "She's been rude to half the staff too," he said, stepping forward. "Tells us to keep the riffraff out." Rachel's face twisted, her voice a shriek. "Shut up, Liam," she said, her ponytail bouncing. "You're just a bellboy. You don't know anything." Marcus raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Enough," he said, silencing the room. "Rachel, find me a room, now, and make it quick, or you're done." Rachel's hands shook, her voice barely audible. I'll try," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her eyes darting to the screen. "There's something on the 10th floor." Marcus's gaze didn't soften, his voice low. "Good," he said, his pen a vow in his pocket. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." The guest in the velvet blazer clapped, her voice sharp. "Finally," she said, her companion nodding. "Someone with backbone." Liam's shoulders relaxed, his voice a whisper. "He's gonna fix this place," he said, his eyes bright with hope. Rachel slid a key card across the counter, her voice trembling. "Room 1014, she said, her eyes averted. "It's all we've got." Marcus took the card, his voice a quiet threat. "Better be," he said, his glasses glinting. "But you and I, we're not done talking." The lobby pulsed, the drama a live wire, guests whispering. Their eyes locked on Marcus. The businessman adjusted his tie, his voice low. "That guy's got fire," he said, his briefcase swinging. The companion of the velvet blazer guest smiled, her voice soft. "He's more than he seems." Rachel's confession had cracked the facade, but the real storm, his identity, his power, was brewing, ready to shatter Tate Towers' broken culture. The pen in his pocket burned, his father's integrity driving him toward a reckoning that would leave no one untouched. The lobby of Tate Towers crackled with raw tension, the chandelier's golden glow casting stark shadows across the marble, amplifying the seismic shift unfolding at the front desk. Marcus Tate stood like a pillar, his worn-wool coat open, his knit cap pushed back, the fountain pen in his pocket, etched with integrity, a burning vow. His dark eyes seared with unyielding resolve. Rachel Holt's confession of deliberate bias still echoing, a betrayal of his empire's heart. Rachel slumped against the counter, her blonde ponytail loose, her glossed lips parted in panic, her hands trembling as the weight of her actions crushed her bravado. The air was electric, guests whispering, their phones raised, capturing the drama's pulse. Liam, the bellboy, stood by his cart, his red and gold uniform wrinkled, his freckled face alight with awe at Marcus's command. The guest in the velvet blazer watched, her diamond earrings flashing, her murmurs to her companion a steady drumbeat of approval. Marcus pocketed the keycard for room 1014, his voice low, a controlled inferno. "You think a room fixes this?" he said, his gaze pinning Rachel. "You broke trust, my guests. That's not a glitch. That's you." Rachel's eyes glistened, her voice a desperate plea. "I was doing what I'm told," she said, her hands clutching the counter. "The manager says prioritize VIPs. Keep the image clean." "I didn't mean." "Enough." Marcus cut in, his voice a whip, silencing her. "You chose who gets a room based on your bias. That's not policy, that's poison. Where's your manager?" Rachel's face paled, her voice a whisper. "Karen's in her office," she said, her fingers twisting. "But she'll back me up. She knows how we work." Liam's voice broke through, bold but shaky. "Karen's the problem," he said, stepping forward, his cart forgotten. "She pushes us to curate guests, says it's for the brand." The lobby gasped, guests turning, their murmurs swelling. The guest in the velvet blazer nodded, her voice sharp. "This place is rotten," she said, her phone still recording. "No wonder it's a mess." A businessman in a pinstripe suit spoke up, his voice dry. "I've lost clients over this," he said, his briefcase thudding down. "Someone needs to answer." Marcus's gaze shifted, his voice a quiet command. "Liam, get Karen out here," he said, his glasses glinting. "Now." Liam nodded, his voice firm. "On it," he said, darting toward the back office, his steps quick, his loyalty to Marcus now aflame. Rachel's voice trembled, her eyes pleading. "You're making a mistake," she said, her ponytail sagging. "Karen'll tell you. This is how it's done." Marcus leaned closer, his voice a velvet blade. "If that's true, Karen's got bigger problems than you," he said, his pen a vow in his pocket. "But I'm betting you're both in deep." The office door swung open, and Karen, the manager, strode out, her tailored blazer crisp, her auburn hair pinned tight, her pale face set in a mask of authority. Her blue eyes flicked from Rachel to Marcus, her voice smooth but guarded. "What's the issue here?" she said, her hands clasped. "Rachel, you okay?" Rachel's voice cracked, her hands flailing. "He's accusing me of deleting his booking," she said, pointing at Marcus. "Says I'm biased. But I was following your rules, Karen." Karen's smile was thin, her voice calm. "Let's not escalate," she said, her eyes narrowing at Marcus. "Sir, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Our system's been temperamental." Marcus's grin was cold, his voice a growl. "Temperamental?" he said, pulling out his second phone, the screen glowing. "Or deliberately rigged?" Rachel swapped my room for a VIP. Says it's your policy. That true? Karen's face stiffened, her voice sharp. We prioritize high-value guests, she said, her hands tightening. It's standard. You wouldn't understand. The lobby erupted in murmurs, guests shaking their heads. The guest in the velvet blazer scoffed, her voice loud. Standard? She said, her phone raised. That's discrimination, plain and simple. Liam returned, his voice low. She's lying. He whispered to Marcus, his eyes fierce. Karen's been dodging complaints for years. Marcus's eyes locked on Karen, his voice a thunderclap. You're done dodging, he said, stepping forward. Fire Rachel. Right now. In front of everyone. Karen's jaw dropped, her voice shrill. Fire her? She said, her blazer creasing as she recoiled. You can't order me around. Who do you think you are? Marcus's grin widened, his voice a quiet promise. You'll find out, he said, his pen burning in his pocket. Do it or you're next. The lobby was a powder keg, guests whispering, their eyes wide. The businessman muttered, "This is unreal." His tie loosened. The companion of the velvet blazer guest gasped. He's got her trapped. Karen hesitated, her voice trembling. Rachel, she started, then straightened, her voice hard. You're terminated. Clear your desk. Rachel's face crumpled, her voice a wail. Karen, you can't, she said, her hands shaking. You told me to do it. Karen's eyes flicked away, her voice cold. You misunderstood, she said, turning from Rachel's glare. Rachel grabbed her bag, her voice a sob. You'll regret this, she said, storming toward the exit, her ponytail bouncing, the lobby watching in stunned silence. Marcus's gaze shifted to Karen, his voice low, lethal. You're not off the hook, he said, his glasses glinting. This hotel's rotting under you. We're talking. Now. The chandeliers flickered, the lobby a stage for a reckoning. Liam's hands steadied, his awe for Marcus soaring, while Karen's mask cracked, her empire trembling. The guests held their breath, sensing a deeper truth, a revelation of Marcus's power, poised to shatter Tate Towers' broken soul. The lobby of Tate Towers was a frozen tableau, the chandelier's golden light bathing the marble in a surreal glow, the air thick with the aftershock of Rachel Holt's tearful exit. Marcus Tate stood resolute, his worn wool coat unbuttoned, his knit cap now in his hand, revealing his salt and pepper hair, the fountain pen in his pocket, etched with integrity, pulsed like a heartbeat, fueling his unyielding mission to purge his empire's rot. His dark eyes locked on Karen, the manager, whose tailored blazer seemed to shrink around her, her auburn hair fraying from its tight bun, her pale face a mask of barely concealed panic. The guests, still clutching phones, whispering furiously, formed a silent jury, their gazes darting between Marcus and Karen. Liam, the bellboy, stood rooted by his cart, his red and gold uniform rumpled, his freckled face alight with a mix of awe and nervous anticipation. The guest in the velvet blazer leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light, her murmurs to her companion a low hum of expectation. Karen's voice wavered, her hands clasped tightly. This is out of hand, she said, her blue eyes darting to the crowd. You've made your point, sir. Let's discuss this privately. Marcus's grin was cold, his voice a steel blade. Privately? He said, stepping closer, his glasses glinting. You hid this mess behind closed doors for years. Time's up. Answer for it, here now. Liam's voice broke through, hesitant but clear. She's dodged complaints forever, he said, his hands steady on the cart. Guests, staff. She buries it all to keep the numbers clean. The lobby murmured, guests nodding, their phones still raised. The businessman in the pinstripe suit spoke up, his voice sharp. I filed 3 complaints myself, he said, his briefcase at his feet. Never heard back. This explains it. Karen's face flushed, her voice shrill. That's not true, she said, her bun unraveling. I've kept this hotel running smoothly. You're blowing this out of proportion." Marcus pulled out his second phone, his fingers swift, the screen glowing with data. "Smoothly?" he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "I've got a year's worth of ignored complaints. Rude staff, biased service, all under your watch. You trained Rachel to pick and choose guests. That's your legacy." Karen's breath hitched, her voice a plea. "I was protecting the brand," she said, her hands trembling. "We cater to elite clients. It's how we survive." The guest in the velvet blazer scoffed, her voice loud. "Elite?" she said, her phone capturing every word. "You mean rich and connected? This is shameful." Liam's eyes flashed, his voice bold. "She told us to turn away undesirables," he said, stepping forward. "Said it keeps the vibe right. It's disgusting." The lobby erupted, guests whispering, their outrage palpable. The companion of the velvet blazer guest gasped, "Unbelievable." Her eyes wide, the businessman muttered, "This place is done." His tie loose, Marcus's gaze bore into Karen, his voice a command. "You're done burying this," he said, pocketing his phone. "But I need to know, how deep does this go?" Before Karen could respond, Liam's radio crackled, and he answered, his voice low. "Yes, sir," he said, then turned to Marcus, his face pale. "Mr. Tate, the regional director's on the line. He's asking for you, by name." The lobby froze, a collective gasp rippling through. Karen's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "Tate?" she said, her blazer sagging. "Marcus Tate." The Marcus Tate. Marcus's grin was slow, devastating. His voice calm but seismic. "Yeah," he said, adjusting his glasses. "That Marcus Tate, owner of this hotel. And you just showed me exactly how you've been running my empire." The guests erupted, phones flashing, whispers exploding into a roar. The businessman dropped his briefcase, his voice stunned. "He's the owner?" he said, his jaw slack. The guest in the velvet blazer laughed, her voice triumphant. "She's finished." Liam's freckles stood out, his voice a mix of awe and relief. "I knew it," he said, his hands steady. "I saw your picture in the company memo." Karen staggered, her voice a choked sob. I didn't know," she said, her bun collapsing, her hands clutching her blazer. "Mr. Tate, I swear, I was just..." "Save it." Marcus cut in, his voice a quiet blade. "You built a culture of bias and looked the other way. That's not management, that's betrayal." The companion of the velvet blazer guest clapped, her voice soft. "He's cleaning house," she said, her eyes bright. The businessman nodded, his voice low. "About damn time." Marcus turned to the crowd, his voice resonant. "This hotel's mine," he said, his pen a vow in his pocket. "And it's gonna change. Starting now. Every guest gets respect. No exceptions. Anyone who can't deliver is out." The lobby cheered, guests raising glasses, their phones capturing the moment. Liam's shoulders relaxed, his voice a whisper. "He's the real deal," he said, his eyes shining. Karen's face crumpled, her voice barely audible. "What happens to me?" she said, her hands trembling, her authority shattered. Marcus's gaze was unyielding, his voice final. "You'll find out," he said, his glasses glinting. "But first, we're auditing every inch of this place. No more shadows." The chandeliers glowed, the lobby a crucible of truth unveiled. Liam's awe soared, the guests' outrage turned to hope, and Karen stood exposed, her empire of excuses collapsing. Marcus's identity was no longer a secret, but the real reckoning, his vision for Tate Towers, was about to reshape the hotel and Millfield forever. The lobby of Tate Towers hummed with a transformed energy, the chandeliers casting a radiant glow across the marble, their light now a beacon of renewal rather than a mask for rot. Marcus Tate stood at the heart of it, his worn wool coat draped over a chair, his knit cap tucked away, his salt and pepper hair catching the light, the fountain pen in his pocket, etched with integrity. felt lighter, its vow fulfilled as he surveyed the aftermath of his reckoning. His dark eyes held a quiet triumph, the sting of Rachel and Karen's betrayal replaced by a vision for his empire's rebirth. Karen stood frozen near the desk, her tailored blazer creased, her auburn hair spilling loose, her pale face etched with defeat, her authority shattered. The guests, their phones now lowered, buzzed with awe, their whispers a chorus of respect. Liam, the bellboy, leaned against his cart, his red and gold uniform rumpled, his freckled face beaming with pride for Marcus's stand. The guest in the velvet blazer smiled, her diamond earrings glinting, her murmurs to her companion now warm with hope. Marcus turned to Karen, his voice steady. "Final, you're done here," he said, his glasses reflecting the light. "Pack your things. You let this hotel fester, and I don't keep dead weight." Karen's lips trembled, her voice a broken plea. "Please," she said, her hands wringing. "I've given years to this place. Give me a chance to fix it." Marcus's gaze hardened, his voice a quiet blade. "You had years," he said, his pen a vow in his pocket. "You chose to bury complaints and push bias. That's not leadership, it's cowardice." The lobby murmured, guests nodding, their approval palpable. The businessman in the pinstripe suit spoke up, his voice firm. "Good riddance," he said, his briefcase at his side. "This place needs a clean slate." Liam stepped forward, his voice bold. "She ignored us too," he said, his eyes on Marcus. "Staff tried to speak up, but she shut us down. You're doing the right thing." Karen's shoulders slumped, her voice a whisper. I'm sorry," she said, her eyes glistening, her blazer sagging as she turned to leave, the click of her heels a fading echo. Marcus faced the crowd, his voice resonant. "This hotel's changing," he said, his hands steady. "Every guest, every staff member, deserves respect. I'm starting with a full audit, refunds for every complaint, retraining for every employee. If you can't uphold integrity, you're out." The lobby erupted in applause, guests raising glasses, their faces alight. The guest in the velvet blazer clapped, her voice clear. "That's how you run a business," she said, her companion nodding. The businessman smiled, his voice low. "Finally, some damn standards." Liam's eyes shone, his voice eager. "Can I help?" he said, stepping closer. "I know the staff, the good ones. We want this place to shine." Marcus clapped his shoulder, his voice warm. "You're in, Liam," he said, his grin genuine. "Start by rounding up the team. We're meeting tonight." Days later, Tate Towers buzzed with reform. Marcus led a staff meeting, sharing a story of his father, a hotel porter who taught him that every guest, from bellboy to billionaire, deserved dignity. He pinned a new mission statement behind the desk: integrity first. Refunded guests returned, their trust renewed, while retrained staff, led by Liam's enthusiasm, greeted each arrival with genuine care. Rachel was blacklisted from the chain, her actions a cautionary tale. Karen's office stood empty, her replacement a sharp, fair manager who'd earned Marcus's trust. One evening, Marcus stood in the lobby, now alive with diverse guests, families, travelers, locals, all welcomed equally. A young girl, her backpack patched, approached, her voice shy. "Thanks for fixing this place," she said, holding up a key card. "Mom said it's our first real vacation." Marcus knelt, his voice soft. "You're why I do this," he said, handing her a hotel pen. "Keep exploring, kid." The lobby cheered, guests smiling, their phones capturing the moment. Liam, now training as a junior manager, grinned, his voice proud. "You're changing everything," he said, his uniform sharp. Marcus touched the pen in his pocket, his voice a whisper. "For you, Dad, Tate Towers wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was a promise, a place where integrity outshone bias, where every soul was seen." Millfield's whispers turned to praise, the hotel's glow drawing travelers far and wide. Marcus's stand had sparked a revolution, proving that leadership isn't about power, but about accountability. Rachel and Karen's fall was a lesson. Disrespect poisons, but integrity heals. The businessman returned, booking his clients with a nod of respect. The guest in the velvet blazer left a glowing review, her words echoing, "Tate Towers is back." In a single night, Marcus had dismantled a broken culture, rebuilding his empire on his father's truth. Respect every guest always. The lobby gleamed, a testament to a man who walked in unseen but left a legacy that would shine for generations. The story of Marcus Tate and Tate Towers is a searing lesson in integrity, accountability, and the power of confronting bias head-on. Marcus, disguised in a worn coat, exposed a toxic culture of discrimination led by Rachel and Karen, who judged guests by appearance rather than worth. His father's pen, etched with integrity, symbolizes the unwavering principle that every person, regardless of status, deserves respect. Marcus's calm yet relentless pursuit of justice, from forcing Rachel's dismissal to ousting Karen, teaches that true leadership doesn't tolerate excuses. It demands action. Liam's courage in speaking out highlights the ripple effect of one person's stand, inspiring others to challenge wrong. The hotel's transformation into a beacon of fairness, driven by Marcus's vision and his father's legacy, shows that dismantling prejudice starts with accountability. This tale urges us to examine our own biases, act with courage, and build spaces where every voice is heard. It's a call to lead with integrity, ensuring no one is invisible, and to transform systems that fail the vulnerable. Did Marcus's story ignite you? Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage and justice. Hit the bell to catch the next unforgettable story.